Hello Internet and all the pre-PA students out there currently looking for patient contact hours. I've definitely been there before and I still in many ways feel like I'm there. It can be difficult to figure out what kind of patient contact hours is right for you. With so many options being out there such as medical assistant, nursing assistant, physical therapy aide, scribing, phlebotomy, EMT, and the list goes on, it can be difficult to figure out which one is the right suit for you. With that said, it's important to remember that patient contact hours is not just a number that you have to fill before applying to PA schools, but it's also an opportunity for everyone to gain a great amount of experience and valuable lessons and skill sets that they can use in their medical career. Today I'm going to be diving into more about scribing and what that's like and who it's for. Now, as a pre-PA student, we have to remember that scribing does not count as patient contact hours in all programs. So it's important to check with the program that you're interested in and to see if they count scribing as a patient contact hours. Regardless, scribing is such a great opportunity for you to get more insight into what a day-to-day life of a doctor or PA is like in the emergency room. Especially if your interest is in emergency medicine, scribing is an amazing opportunity to see a bunch of cases and to get to know what the pace is like and exactly see what it's like to work in that environment. So this interview covers a lot of questions starting from what it's like to be a scribe, the requirements to be a scribe, the most difficult thing as a scribe, and all kinds of insights that hopefully will help everyone in figuring out if scribing is the right patient contact hours for them. So with that said, I hope everyone enjoys this interview, and let's get into it. So this is Alex. He's currently working as a scribe in the ER, and he's here to answer some questions that I have here for him. So do you want to do a brief intro to how long you've been working as a scribe?
Yeah, so my name's Alex, as she mentioned. I've been a scribe for a little over a year and a half now. I work in a level 2 trauma center, so that along with being a trauma center, it's also a STEMI center, a stroke center, so you see a lot of high acuity patients working there as a medical scribe, and just working as a scribe to work towards getting hours for PA school.
Okay, thanks for that. So I know a lot of pre-PAs are interested in doing scribes because it's such a good exposure to what you'll be actually doing as a PA.
Definitely.
But I know there's also certain things you have to look out for when trying to decide if it's a right pre-PA experience for you or not. So in your opinion, who is scribing for and who is it not for?
I think scribing is a great experience. Before scribing, I was actually working as an EMT, which gave me a lot of good hands-on care experience. Working as an EMT is great. You learn a lot. You get to touch patients. You get to learn things within the scope of being an EMT. But I think one of the benefits of being a medical scribe is that you get to learn things that are within the scope of the provider you're working with. So as a medical scribe, I work alongside both doctors, PAs, NPs, and while working alongside them, you get to see them, you get to see their patient interactions, you get to see them do consults with different specialties, and you really learn a lot of things outside of the scope of, I guess, like an EMT or other healthcare positions. So yeah, I think being a medical scribe is very beneficial for anyone who's interested in the medical field. I think one thing to consider, though, if you are going the PA route, is that not every school will take you as clinical experience, however, some do.
Another general question is, what's the demographics of the other coworkers you work with, like other scribes? Like maybe their age range, their end goal, in their healthcare?
Yeah, I think one of the requirements actually to work at the ER I work at is to have a degree. So most of the scribes are college graduates, so that's ranging from anywhere the age of 22 to maybe 25. A lot of them are pre-med students. There are some pre-PAs, and I believe there are 2 pre-nursing students. So, I mean, anyone that's becoming a medical scribe, their end goal is to eventually work and become a healthcare provider or become a healthcare professional. Yeah.
Thank you. So knowing that a lot of scribes are in their pre-health area, what's the turnover rate like within your coworkers? How often do they
move on and new ones.
Yeah. I think in general, most people stay maybe like a year and a half to 2 years. By the time people apply for the job, I guess they're getting ready for applications or applying for school. And then, as you know, it's like a year-long process before anything really happens. So a lot of them eventually do get into like a medical school, PA school, whatever they're aiming for. And they leave after that. So I would say maybe like a year and a half to 2 years in general.
Okay, so we're gonna go more in depth about scribing. How many days, hours do you work in a week?
So I think that's one of the great things about working in the ER is that the schedules are very flexible. So what that means is that in a month, I was working around maybe 120, 130 hours. However, if I wanted to have a week off, I would have an entire week off. I would just have to make up the days later on in the month. So it really depends on each month, but in general, maybe like 3 to 4 times a week for 8-hour shifts, 8 to 9-hour shifts.
How would you describe your work environment?
I like it. Every day is something different. There are some shifts where I go in there and there really isn't much going on, so I can really interact with the doctor or PA I'm working with and really build that relationship. However, there are other days where it's super busy when you walk in. There's already traumas or medical alerts coming in, so you have to go see those patients with your doctor you're working with. Or they're just, there's just like a lot of patients and it's like an endless amount of work, which is always nice at the same time because it makes time go by faster. But every day is different.
Going off of that, how are there days that you find to be just bearable, like you're just getting by, and if so, what are your like strategies to making it until the end of the day?
I think those days happen more often than not working in the ER, especially now at the time of this recording. It's like the flu season, so there's just so many patients coming in, which means as a medical scribe, you have to get used to being behind it and playing catch up. And I think one thing that helps me, playing that game of catch up is just being organized with my notes and eventually coming back to the patients that were, for example, discharged like hours ago and like finally getting to their chart. And it's only because I'm able to stay organized with my work and my notes that I'm able to later transcribe those notes into the medical chart.
Okay, so does that mean you write the notes by hand on a piece of paper and then you write in the laptop rather than having the laptop or computer?
It really depends on like what part of the ER you're working at, but I guess in most cases, I guess how it goes is that I would follow the provider into the room with a clipboard, paper, and a pen. I would write the notes on paper and later transcribe those notes onto the computer, onto like this Word doc, and later transcribe those notes on my Word doc onto like the actual medical chart.
Wow.
So that's just my personal system that I need to stay organized. Everyone has their own thing they do.
Is there a certain rule as to how you cannot do and how you should do in the hospital?
I don't think so. As long as the final product is accurate and concise, if all the information is on the medical chart, that's all that matters. All the notes before it, it's really however you want to do it.
So does that also mean if you take separate notes and you don't directly put in the medical records, does that mean you could technically take that home if you don't catch up at that day, or does it have to be done by the end of your shift?
It has to be done by the end of your shift. So we don't take any of the patient's information home with us at the end of our shift. Everything is put into like this, I think we call it like a shred box, where the hospital's going to shred all the paperwork, and that way it really keeps the patient's information like confidential. And that's what you want in the medical field.
That makes sense. Okay. So can you walk me through your day from the start till the end?
Yeah. So I try to get to work like 10 minutes early. That way I can kind of set up my computer, my desk, and just like how I want it set up. So going to work, we have like 2 monitors, and I like having specific things in. I like having like structure, I like having things organized how I'm used to it. So we have things called like that we use as templates for like the review systems, like the physical exams, and just other like templates that we have. And I just have like having it open and having it again organized the way I want it. And after doing that, the provider usually comes in by the time I'm finished organizing my space, and they'll start picking up patients off of the tracker. So that's like the computerized system we use to figure out who still needs to be seen in the ER. And once they pick up the patients, we go see each patient individually, and I just follow them into the room, document the patient interactions by writing on a piece of paper, later transcribing that onto my computer, and that's pretty much a shift. We go see one patient, we go back to our computer area where I start the medical chart, and the doctor or PA will start putting in orders, and we just go back and forth until the end of the shift.
So how fast-paced would you say it is, like the whole work day? I know you said it depends.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It really depends on the day. Again, some days, some of the better days are like when people aren't getting sick or people aren't getting in accidents, so there aren't that many patients to be seen or none at all at the time. So it's sort of like free time. You just kind of talk with your provider you're working with. And other days, there's just a lot of patients, so you're just playing the catch-up game throughout the shift.
Do you work with one provider or 1 to 2 providers during your whole stay there, or is it always changing?
So, like at every shift, is it a new provider or?
Like during your work there, like if you're staying there for a year, are you gonna be working with like 1 to 2 providers, or is it like always different?
It's always gonna be different, but in general, I prefer working like nights, and that's the overnight shift. So the providers I work with are generally the same people, because there are very few people who prefer working the nights.
Right.
So in that sense, I generally work with maybe like 3 or 4 of the same doctors who prefer working nights, and maybe 3 or 4 PAs who prefer working the night shift. However, every shift, it's going to be like a different provider in the sense that not every provider and Scribe is scheduled for the same exact shift on the same exact day of the week.
Right.
That makes sense. So every Monday, I'm not going in working the night shift. Everyone's schedule's a little different.
Right. And between working with those different types of providers and different people, do you find that there are certain expectations that are staying the same between those people, or different?
Yeah. So one thing I quickly learned when I was a new medical scribe is that every provider likes a chart done a little differently. So as a medical scribe, you kind of got to learn all the preferences of the different providers you're working with, so you can tailor how you do your charts to their liking. Because when I was going through the training for the job, we were taught one set way of how to do medical chart, a generalized way, which is great, but it's a little different when you're working with different providers and their different preferences. So everyone likes having the chart done a little bit differently. Some like it when it's very detailed, others like it when it's very more general. So it just depends.
Okay, that could be tricky, huh?
Yeah.
And what would you say your overall performance is dependent on? Would you say that it's your typing speed or listening skills or memory or whatever, medical terminology? I
wouldn't say it's definitely medical term. It does help, but a lot of times I'm referencing Google, different medical terms or how to spell things. I would say it's more so your listening skills. You really need to be able to pick up what the patients are reporting to the doctor or PA you're working with. And a lot of times when patients do come in by ambulance and when the paramedic is able to report, they tend to talk pretty fast. So you really got to be able to pick up what they're saying and really be able to pick out what's pertinent to the story. So I would say listening skills over anything. Typing skills and medical terminology do help. However, I think as long as you're able to stay organized with your notes, you'll eventually catch up. So just being able to listen and take down your notes.
Do you feel that through your training, they made you comfortable in that listening skill area, or did you feel like you were more left to yourself to figure that out?
I think it just comes with more experience than anything, because training, I guess the way they train you can only prepare you so much because you're being trained in this controlled environment. They're not really giving you the medical information as fast as a paramedic would on a real patient. So it just really comes down to the experience and just being able to listen to a lot of different reports from EMS or listening to the different ways patients would describe their pain and being able to I don't know. I don't know how to go with that, but yeah, I just think it comes down to experience.
Okay, so more
Just having
experience.
that practice.
Okay, that makes sense. So at what point do you feel like you felt pretty confident and comfortable in your position as a scribe?
Maybe I don't know. It was like such a long time ago, but maybe 2 months into it, I think. Maybe I think the training might have been like 2 to 3 weeks long, and then eventually you're just kind of on your own. However, you're never really on your own because there's always there's always a provider you can reference to and how they want the chart done. But aside from that, there's also like different medical scribes working on shift that you can always like ask them about any questions you have. But I think a couple of months in is when I definitely felt more autonomous and I really didn't ask for any help and felt very comfortable with like how to do the medical charts.
So we're gonna talk more about preparation to become a scribe.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you did personally outside of the the program training that, an attempt to prepare for the position?
So before working as a scribe, as I mentioned earlier, I was an EMT, so I think that helped a little bit. Aside from that, there wasn't really any like preparation I did. Yeah, so I guess I had a little bit of like medical experience, which helped a little bit.
Definitely. Let's see. If you were to make a list of requirements to becoming a scribe, that's not already in the list of requirements to becoming a scribe from like the official papers, what would they be?
I guess just having a passion for medicine and having an interest in it. Because scribe work, I wouldn't say it's the easiest thing because you do need to have like a base medical knowledge. You're constantly behind. Unfortunately, the pay isn't that great.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm sure a lot of scribes and myself, we're not doing it for the money, we're doing it for the experience. So just having that interest.
So how long was the time frame between you applying to the position to you actually starting work as a scribe?
Man, it's such a long time ago, but I think it was like a couple of months maybe, because there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of like different hoops you have to jump through before working in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the background check and like the vaccinations or whatever else you have to do.
Right.
So I think maybe 2 to 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, wow. That's actually longer than what I thought it would be. But
It was a while
still-
ago, but I mean, it wasn't a quick process where like,
Right.
you just start a week after.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was a little while. The approval process takes a while.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to interview in person, and if so, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So there was an in-person interview. It was with the lead scribe, and it wasn't a difficult interview. A lot of the medical scribes come into the job without any medical experience, so they're not asking you about like different like medical topics or like different medical cases.
Right.
It's like very generic questions from what I remember. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you describe a time you had a conflict with a coworker and had to resolve it. Questions like
okay.
of that nature. But
Right.
aside from that, yeah, it wasn't a difficult interview, and the people are very friendly, so it helped a lot.
Okay. So, what program did you sign up with, and why? Because I know I think it's the same for the whole states, but there's Scribe America and there's ProScribe and probably other ones that I don't.
Yeah, there's I'm sure there's a lot of different companies. I think
Yeah.
the one I work for is Vituity, and the reason I applied for that was because honestly, their hospital is the closest to my house, and I'm not a big fan of commuting far. And I just happened to find the job listing on Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied for that, and I'm happy I did. Because the hospital I work at, again, it's like a level 2 trauma center, it's a stroke center, STEMI center. So you really do get to see a lot. Whenever like whenever trauma patients come in, ranging from like car accidents, like stabbings and gunshot wounds, you get to see all that as a medical scribe. You're in the room in the trauma center, in the trauma room, with the physician, the trauma surgeon, like the whole trauma team, and you've seen the whole process, and it's really fun.
So, do you think, since you already had some experience as an EMT prior to this, do you think for a person that doesn't have experience in the emergency medicine field would have a hard time in that kind of environment? Or is there like options for them if they don't feel comfortable, or is that one of the mandatory requirements for you to be in the ER?
There are. I just actually learned this a couple months ago, but there's you can be a medical scribe with the hospitalist. So in that sense, I mean, you wouldn't be working in the ER. You'll be working in the hospital. I'm not entirely sure what the hospitalist does exactly. But yeah, they would be, I guess, on the floors, you know.
Oh.
I can't speak on behalf of what hospital scribes do, but there is an option to work for a hospitalist, a physician, NPA. But if you do want to work in the ER, you do have to be comfortable around like seeing traumas and seeing, unfortunately, people die and people sick. That's part of the job.
Right.
Sorry, what else was the question?
No, I think you answered it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How long was your training?
It was a week of classroom training. So that's when we went to like the basement of the hospital, and we were like sitting in front of a computer and just familiarizing ourselves with the medical charts and things that need to be, I guess, like clicked in and whatnot. Things that had to be done within the medical chart. So we spent about a week doing that, and then I want to say it's like 2 to 3 weeks of like floor training, and that's where we're working alongside a physician and a PA, and alongside like a seasoned scribe who's kind of just watching over us and making sure we're doing everything that we need to do.
Okay. So from what I searched was that a lot of people actually don't make it out of floor training. Is that true in your experience? And if so, like, what did you see?
So,
like the amount of people.
Yeah. So like when we hire people, we hire them in classes, and maybe it's like 3 or 4 times a year. So we just hire like a batch of like 10 new scribes every 3 to 4 times a year. And I think 2 classes ago, half the class of 10 didn't pass floor training. And I think that was because we implemented like a new way of scribing, and that's something we call like shared scribe. So 2 classes ago is when my site started doing a thing where the medical scribe will work alongside the PA and physician, so working alongside 2 people, which means just like double the amount of work really. But I think we figured out in a way where it kind of worked out for the last class, because I don't think anyone from the last class of 10 dropped out floor training. So I would say in general, people do pass floor training. I think 2 classes ago was sort of the anomaly, just the exception.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So they prepare you well.
That's good. What would you say the toughest part in training was?
For myself personally, I think it was just getting familiarized with the computerized medical chart, because I guess I already had like a base medical knowledge. I was familiar with interacting with patients. I was familiar with giving a report or listening to reports from EMS. So I kind of had that medical background, but I had no idea how like the medical system was used. I wasn't familiar with the medical system at the site I was working at.
So do you interact with patients at all as a scribe?
Very minimal. So as a medical scribe, you're not technically allowed to touch patients. However, I mean, I do like very simple things to help expedite the process for the provider I'm working with, such as just rooming patients, so bringing them from the waiting room into another room where the provider can maybe do an exam, or offering them like comfort measures like blanket pillows or water, just very like simple things.
Right.
Like, I would say things that a hospital volunteer would do.
Well, I think that was all the questions I had ready. Thank you so much again for letting me interview you.
Of course.
And good luck on your journey. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.